today's FYN virtual learning series event on parenting during the workday, finding the balance and how to keep your cool. Alors, bienvenue aux séries d'apprentissage virtuel du réseau des jeunes fonctionnaires fédéraux. Et cette séance, ça va être sur être parent pendant une journée du travail, trouver l'équilibre et comment garder son calme. I will note that this session will be in English. So if you have any questions, please feel free to pose those in the language of your choice. And we will do our best based on interest to schedule a French session as well. I think this is a very important topic, especially for all of you parents out there during this time of COVID-19. I am joining Joshua Frame, and I'm the National Chair of the Federal Youth Network. I'm joining you from Ottawa, which is the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. I would also like to recognize that many of you are participating from other traditional territories all over the country. And 1 month ago today, was the 13th anniversary of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So that was adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations on the 13th of September in 2007. So always good to keep that in mind. So as we reflect on which unceded traditional territories we're on from across Canada. Without further ado, I'll introduce our panelists. So we have Steph Percival and Natasha Kotekon, who are joining us today and have joined us for a number of sessions so far. So thanks very much for joining us. And this is a partnered event with FlexGC. And we have a couple more events coming up, so definitely stay tuned if you are interested in that content, and we will post the links to register. So Steph and Natasha, I will hand it over to you. And merci pour nous joindre, et j'espère qu'on va avoir une bonne session. So thanks very much for joining us, and I'm sure we'll have a great and informative and engaging session today.
Great, thank you, Josh. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay? Yes, awesome. So I am Natasha, and today my colleague Stephanie and I will be presenting on parenting during a pandemic. And we will be sharing a deck with you with our tips, our tricks, our insights, and just what we're hearing from across the board. So I think we'll be sharing that deck shortly.
1 sec, sorry.
Okay. I didn't know if it was me. I'm working on my phone because Zoom is blocked in my department. So I wanted to make sure everybody wasn't seeing what I was seeing, but yeah, you are. Perfect. So parenting during a pandemic is a crazy thing, especially when you have to work. Most of us, I think, want to be like the images that we see on the left-hand side, where the family is, easily able to parent their children while working through their day. But in reality, our reality is more like the image on the right. And this lady really resonated with me. She has a multitude of things that she has to do during her day, but she still has her cell phone in her hand, her business attire, her laptop, and then is cradling her baby and doing all of the household expectations that need to happen. And this happens, with parents at home that are working during a pandemic right now. So let's address this and talk about it. So just going right into the introductions, if you can flip to the next slide. My name is Natasha Kotekon, and I am joining you today from London, Ontario, where there is a crossroads of traditional lands. So I have indicated what they are on my slide, but there are far too many to list. So just so you know that I am a remote employee working virtually for the public service. I am a free agent. I'm posted right now to the Public Service Renewal Secretariat, and I have been a remote and virtual employee since before the pandemic, the old way, when we didn't have kids at home and I was able to be an old remote worker. I'm also an event planner, which you'll see in my thought process a little bit later of how I think when it comes to structuring, balancing home and children and work. And I have 6 children that are home with me of all different ages during these unprecedented times of the COVID-19. And their ages are 5, 8, 10, 13, 15, and 20. 3 girls and 3 boys. And so thanks to FYN for hosting another learning session with FlexGC. I can't believe that we're already on our series number 5 of 7 sessions. Be sure to tune into next week where we talk about distributed teams at 1:30 on Tuesday. And then on the 23rd, we'll be talking about revolutionizing the public service during COVID-19. So I'll flip it over to Stephanie, my colleague, so she can do her introductions.
Thank you, Natasha. And yes, you heard her right. She has 6 kids at home with her during COVID-19, so she is a superwoman, and I so admire Natasha and getting to work with her. So I am a free agent, and I'm currently working at Être. I'm also the co-lead of FlexGC, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. I specialize in community building and engagement, and I'm very passionate about putting people at the heart of what I do. So I really focus my work around public servants and helping public servants have a better, healthier work environment. I've been working remotely part-time since 2017, obviously full-time now, and I have a lot of knowledge about virtual collaboration tools and techniques and experience in building healthy teams. And I'm a mom to a 2-year-old boy who has literally climbed on my back during virtual meetings. So I get how everyone is feeling during this time. Can I get you to switch to the next slide? All right, so we'll just give you a little bit of context about FlexGC before we get into the heart of the talk. So we are a grassroots collective working across the Government of Canada. What that means is that we're not affiliated with any one organization. We're not an official network within the Government of Canada. We are all volunteers. We are all public servants who just want to help other people adapt to working remotely and working on distributed teams. So our focus is really on experience-based support, amplifying existing resources that we think are excellent and helpful for people, building partnerships across government, like this partnership with the Federal Youth Network, and a lot of user research and finding out how people are feeling and how people are coping during this time. And that really helps us decide what we're gonna develop and deliver to people across the public service. Next slide. All right, so this cartoon really resonated with me because I feel like normal is a myth, and we keep hearing this term, the new normal, and we are so far from normal that I just like to start every presentation talking about that. Last month, we delivered a presentation on adapting to our new realities, and we talked about this and the idea that normal during the midst of a pandemic is just not realistic. I think parents know this better than anyone. When the pandemic hit, like, it was the first time for a lot of us to do any of this stuff. So it was our first time working remotely for a lot of people. It was the first time for people to use virtual tools for connection. For most of us, it was the first time juggling work and childcare every day. First time potentially sharing workspace with your partner. That's what I'm in the middle of right now. First time living through a pandemic of this magnitude in our lifetimes in our country. And the first time living through a lockdown, which most of us have experienced as well. And some of us are experiencing partially once again this fall. On top of that, we're all living in very different realities. So some of us are working at home with kids underfoot, while other people are at home feeling isolated and alone. Some of us are working in homes with yards and offices with closed doors, and other people are feeling very cramped. Some of us have sent our kids back to school or daycare, and other people just aren't comfortable doing that this year. Some of us have taken up new hobbies, like I hear sourdough starters all the time. I'm envious of you sourdough bakers. And other people really miss their old routines of going to the gym and things like that. And then some of us love working from home, and other people miss office life. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, because we're all living in very different realities right now, and that's okay. It's okay to own that, and it's really important that we talk about that. And yet we all have something in common. So if you can switch to the next slide. So we asked parents in the Government of Canada to describe for us how they've been feeling about parenting during the pandemic. And these words came up over and over again in the responses. We had about 100 people reply just over the weekend. And so many of the stories that people were sharing really hit home for me and Natasha both. And as I look at these words, it just it hits me in the heart. Failing, that concept came up over and over again. Struggle, guilt, the unsustainability of working this way under these circumstances, stress, exhaustion. I'm permanently exhausted. I don't know about you. And someone had added a line in their response saying, I can't do this anymore. And it makes me want to cry when I read that, because I think we have all felt that at various points in time. And this is just a very real reflection, I think, of what we're all experiencing right now. So I will share with you a little bit of my story because one of our goals with this session is just to help contribute to that sense that you're not alone, and that what you're going through is something that we're all experiencing right now. So when Natasha and I started prepping for this session, we were reflecting on each other's different parts, and we realized how different they were. I have a toddler at home. He's 2 and a bit. And a lot of the more practical, tangible tips, it's the chaos slide, thank you. Just, they don't work in the reality of a 2-year-old. And yet, I admire so much of what Natasha's going to share for you. I admire her ability to parent and the approaches that she shares. I covet them a little bit, but it's just not my reality. And yet they're both chaotic. So we lovingly titled our parts Chaos and Organized Chaos. So let's talk about the chaos. So I mentioned I have a toddler at home. He turned 2 in June. He is rambunctious and he is playful and affectionate, and he's curious and funny and smart. Obviously, I love him so much. He's also 2, and he is in the throes of toddlerhood, tantrums and all. My husband and I both work from home, and we don't have a large house or separate offices. We don't have a door between our workspaces. So, I mean, this morning, I was literally venting to Natasha about how I just want some quiet sometimes, and I just want to be able to hear my own thoughts, because I literally spent the whole morning listening to him on conference calls for a good 3 hours, and sometimes you just want some peace and quiet. And that space dynamic also means that when our toddler is at home during the workday, he is right in the thick of things. He is right between the 2 of us working, regardless of whether I'm at the dining room table, which is where I'm sitting right now, or my husband's across the room at his workstation. There's no sheltering ourselves from the chaos, if I can say that. So that's just another part of our context. He was at home with us for 4 months at the beginning of the pandemic. So from when things started in the middle of March until about the middle of July. And so for us, it meant a lot of figuring out how we were going to juggle, and a lot of trial and error. It took us a solid 6 weeks probably to come to a routine that at least mostly worked for all 3 of us. And I think that that's something that everybody is experiencing right now. Having him home during the day, all day, every day, just means there is no control over our work realities. There are days when we were potty training back in the spring where I'm pretty sure both my husband and I were on video chats and there was a toddler streaking in the background. It also meant that sometimes we were on conference calls and we would hear him yelling, "I have to go poop now." And that is just how it is when you have a toddler at home. There's no containing that, I feel, and to try is a bit of an exercise in futility. So all that to say, that's some of our context from the spring. And then it felt like the summer was a bit of a reprieve for us. over the summer. You know, he got to go back to daycare in July, which meant that we slowly were able to kind of form schedules around our workday. It meant that, you know, days. It also was beautiful out in the summertime, so it was a lot of fresh air. We got to see family. And so it felt like a little bit of a reprieve, but at the same time, I didn't come out of this summer feeling this sense of restoration that I do most years, because the fact is that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I think that there's just this ever-present sense of fatigue and stress and uncertainty that underpins this whole time, and we're carrying that with us every single day and trying to parent and work to our best ability. We are now going through, like, the fall just seems, I don't know, it almost is like this impending sense of what if, because it's hard to know what to expect from day to day. We went through our first COVID testing experience a couple of weeks ago, and of course he had to be home with us while we waited for results, and then until he was symptom free. I'm just becoming symptom free myself. The test was negative, but like that means he's back at home, and he's back in the house during the work day, and I anticipate that that's going to happen over and over and over again this fall and winter, and it makes me apprehensive. We've also been going through 6 weeks of sleep regression to add more fun to all of this. And it's just I see somebody just commented, such an emotional roller coaster, and that is absolutely it. Like, it's just so many ups and downs, and like, we're not getting to talk to people about how we're feeling in a way that we were before. I feel lonely sometimes, like, even though I'm constantly surrounded by the two people I love the most in the entire world, I'm not getting that social connection time to go out for coffee with friends or to have dinner with them. We don't have family in town, so we haven't had a bubble in the past 7 months. Like, it's been us. And I think the last time we went on a date was last January for my birthday. And all of that just adds to this this perpetual exhaustion, and even like high emotional state, if that makes sense. I wanted to share a quote that one of the people who responded to our question posted online, because it just really, like, it captured everything I'm feeling right now. And so the quote is, "I feel like I'm constantly failing. I'm either doing a bad job at work or a bad job of parenting. It's hard to maintain a sense of your personal value and self-worth when the two pillars of my identity, my career and being a parent, feel like they have just massive cracks running through their foundation. It feels like an identity crisis." Whew, that really, for me, it summed it up so well. I think I've had a lot of the emotions that I felt when I returned from maternity leave float back to the surface, because I do tie my identity to who I am as a parent, and I do tie my identity to the value I think I can contribute in the workplace. And I remember returning from maternity leave and feeling that, like, total lack of equilibrium, like I wasn't doing either well. And that was just last year. And now here we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I feel like I'm back in that state again, like that transitional state. And this time it feels like Groundhog Day. For me, I can feel my mental health waning. I feel the constant creep of burnout, and I know that others are experiencing that too. That's a big part of why we do what we do with FlexGC. So thank you for bringing up this slide. So we did also have some really, some beautiful responses. All of them are beautiful because they reflect reality. And I think it's so important to talk about the challenges and the positive. But these words really resonated as well. So, like, talking about feeling powerful, grateful, appreciating flexibility in the workplace, getting outside for fresh air with family, feeling the good fortune that we have at least to be employed full-time, to have that stability, as difficult as it is, I think it's important to acknowledge the positive as well. And there was one quote that I want to share with you, because this one was just perfect too, and reminded me so much of being a new mom. Someone posted, "I may get some flack for this. This is crazy and stressful, yes. Max stress, but the moments I am taking a call and breastfeeding while also handing something off to my 4-year-old, and if I can manage contributing, I feel powerful. I feel I can do anything. These moments are few and far between, but they keep me going and pushing through, knowing I'm doing my best right now, and that's all I can do." And that sums it up too, right? I'm not breastfeeding anymore, so I'm not in that place, but I can still feel that like sense of like, yes, when I'm having a really great day and balancing it well, then I feel accomplished and I feel like I am strong. And this quote, I think, sums that up well too. We don't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be all difficult and all good. Like, it is truly a mixture of both experiences. So I'll get you to switch to the next slide. So I'll just share a few of the things that I struggle most with. So for me, setting and holding boundaries can be really challenging. This extends to parenthood and the workday, I feel. I find myself more emotionally reactive right now. Like, I'm just at peak emotional stress. And so that means it's harder for me to take a step back and breathe and be calm when my toddler is just like in the throes of his tantrums. I'm sharing space. And like I said, every so often, that just hits a breaking point too of there's no quiet place in my house. I have that mom guilt that we're all moms and even dads are feeling right now. We are all feeling this guilt of like, I want to be able to do more for my kid. And the reality is that when you're juggling work and parenting at the same time, like, there's only so much of you to go around, and you have to balance that. And my bandwidth has completely changed. I have had to put everything that I wanted to do in terms of personal and professional growth on the back burner, just because focusing on getting through the day and appreciating each day is more than enough for me right now. So I'll get you to change slides there. So I just wanted to share what helps with me, or for me. It's a little bit different than what you'll see from Natasha, who has these amazing practical tips that I wish I could employ. But if I sent my child into the fridge to pick out his own snack, he'd come out with a bottle of hot sauce and a bunch of grapes. So I just can't do some of those more practical things. So a lot of what I do has to focus on what small things that I can do for myself, and what I can control within the boundaries of the team that I work with. So for me, things like finding even 10 minutes at the beginning of the day, maybe before I shower, before I even come downstairs and dive into the chaos, can really help to keep me focused and calm for the day and balanced. Fresh air I found is really important to me. One of the things I realized partway through a new job that I took earlier this summer is that I wasn't getting outside, and it was really starting to impact me. So I started building that time into my day and replacing the time that when I would have been commuting between drop off and work with trying to get outside for a walk, because for me that matters. I'm a huge reader. I love fiction. And for me, if there's one thing I can do for myself every day, it's to try to pick up a book. Even if I'm exhausted and I can only read 5 or 10 pages, that's something for me that helps take me out of my head and is restorative. And then voicing my boundaries, which I feel like sometimes is difficult. And I talk about this in the sense of like, establishing that communication between me and my partner of like, I'm at a breaking point, I need help, I'm not very good at asking for help. So I've had to really try to check in with myself and acknowledge when I'm hitting a tipping point and vocalize that. And then like easy to digest parenting resources. I just don't have the bandwidth for parenting books and like lengthy things, but at the same time, I have a toddler, so I need like those little like quick tips and tricks. Like Big Little Feelings, for example, is a really great Instagram account that I've found really helpful these days. Because like, what do you do when your toddler has decided that it's hit mommy day, or when he's on a 6-week bedtime battle? Those little digestible resources have really helped me refocus myself. And then on the professional front, I am really open and vulnerable with my team. I recognize that there are people who aren't on teams that have very good psychological safety, and sometimes it can be really hard to have this openness with your team when you're in an environment like that. And so if you are on one of those teams, I feel for you, and I'm also here for you. We do one-on-one connections if you ever want to talk, because I do know that it's really challenging depending on the team environment. For me, my team is very, very open to hearing this. Sometimes I just say, no, I can't take this on because X, Y, Z, and because I have that that openness with them, it makes space for me to create those professional boundaries. I also build hard stops right into my calendar, so I have a hard stop in my day and a reminder set for it for the 4 p.m. end of my workday to say, okay, this is my time to go get my kid. If you need me, I'll be back online after he's in bed at 7. Most days this works for me. There are days where urgent things come up and we have to juggle a little more or less, but at least it helps me hold myself accountable to those boundaries. And GST time, I'll give you the politically correct version of that, but it's get stuff done time. And I like to time block my calendar for tasks or things that I need to do, because otherwise I find that the day can get away from me pretty quickly. And then because I have a very, my job is very fluid. I'm a senior advisor to an executive director. My time is not necessarily my own within the workday. Like I'm often, I often get meetings scheduled at the last minute. There are often urgent taskings that come up that have to go up the chain, and they're not really negotiable. So I've started to learn how to get better at taking the time as it comes. So maybe I'm not going to get to eat lunch at lunchtime that day, but it's quiet right now and it's 11:15, and I am going to take that time and I'm going to take a break, because it's really important to build that time for leisure and turning your brain off into your day. So that's it for my section. I'll turn it over to Natasha, because she has, every time I hear her talk about her tips, I can't wait for the day that I can try some of them, because they're awesome. And thank you everyone for listening.
Yeah, so we, as Stephanie had said, we had split our presentation into sort of 2 subsections, chaos and the organized chaos. So I'm going to share my tips on how I try to stay organized, but please don't think that I have it put all together, because I assure you that I do not. I am as human as the rest of you, and I have my own set of challenges. So most days I'm an Uber taxi driver. I'm driving my kids to cheer, soccer, hockey, school, tutor, gymnastics, trying to get groceries in, and working a full work day. And even though my kids are at school, because I'm in a different area from the National Capital Region, I'm in London, Ontario, our, I guess, level of pandemic is a little bit more relaxed than where you are right now. So my kids are still doing all those activities and they are in school. They are only in school half of the time. The way that the area that I'm in has set it up, they do 50% remote learning and 50% in-class learning. So my kids are home 2 days a week, and then 3 days we do virtual learning, and then the following week it flips 3 days in school, 2 days in virtual learning. So I'm trying to balance with my children all of these activities, and I'm also trying to balance their remote learning needs while working my high-performing job and managing the growth in my career, because that's super important to me, and still be present for my family. So how do I manage all this? Most days it's a juggling act, but being a planner, I need structure, so I had to come up with some tips and tricks just for my own sanity, and I lead my crew with this schedule here. Sometimes I land it and we make it through a day where the schedule has been followed, and not always do we stray from what that schedule could look like. On a good day, you know, we make it through, and some days we don't, but I call it lovingly organized chaos. So my youngest is 5, and my stepson is 8, and then my youngest daughter that I have is 10. Then I have a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, and I do have an adult child who's 20. So I have a wide scan of people in my house, and I'm still, like I said, trying to balance them for their virtual needs and home needs, and, you know, feeding everyone, and it's stressful. So I came up with a chart, and I started sort of just sketching out in my mind, you know, what do I need to get through life, just so I don't go absolutely insane and, like, you know, yell at my children and become a terrible parent. How do I get through my work day so that I'm still able to perform what I need each day? And how do I still give to my children and my partner without, you know, overburning myself and burning myself out? So I came up with this chart here. I needed to do my routine. You know, every day I take a walk. I wanted to continue to take my walk. Like Stephanie said, that is sort of the mindfulness that I need to be able to stay centered and continue in my day. I needed, obviously, to check on my kids, especially when they were home doing their remote learning. But I also needed to not be interrupted while I was working in a meeting, let's say, unless it was an absolute emergency. You know, asking me where the remote control is while I'm delivering a session to the ADM is probably not a good time to ask me. And, you know, I also recognize that because I have, on any given day, 8 people in my house, including myself, I need to, you know, do things like blur my background and do some prep time so that the next day would go smoothly in the evening. For my work, I also needed to be present every day from between the hours of 8 and 4, because that's when my manager needed me to be working. I also needed to work uninterrupted on actual work so that I wasn't in meetings all day or helping someone with schooling. Actually rolling up my sleeves and getting work done, I found very hard, so I blocked a set of times. And then I recognized that my kids needed that I would share my work calendar with everybody in the home, and we would get buy-in as to when, like, they could approach me with some times that they needed me. And then I also recognized that my children needed me, plain and simple. And this is a weird time. It's a pandemic, you know. This isn't a traditional work day. I would never have brought my children into my office in the old days, like before the pandemic. Never would I have entered with my 5-year-old, my 8-year-old, my 10-year-old, and so on and so forth. Like, that would have been just absolutely preposterous. But nowadays it's expected of you as you still continue with your work day and you're trying to manage that. So I recognized my children needed me, and I had to let my manager know that my children need me. You know, if there's an emergency, if there's something, I have to stop. And I'll try and be as present as I can in both places, but I can't be in 2 places at once. So recognize that I'm being pulled. I also needed to make sure that, like, I could get through a work day, you know, where I actually started a piece of work and finished it without putting it down, or running somewhere and just, you know, spinning in circles and never completing anything, both in my home, both with my children, at my work, everywhere. I needed to be able to have the time to start at the beginning and finish at the end of the sentence and put that period there and get it accomplished. So the way that I was able to do all this was to get buy-in from my family. So when I presented this scenario, I presented it as team family. We all put our hands in and we said, yes, we're going to do this, and break. But then I found the next day, when I had talked to everyone and we had gone through this plan, they didn't really understand how. So if you could flip to the next slide, Marcella. This is where I then had to break it down a little bit for them so that they could understand what it is that I was talking about and get that buy-in. You know, it's in principle for a kid, when you say, okay, we're going to do this as a team, they say yes, but they don't really understand what it means to actually get through that day or to get through that time. And I found that I was still spinning. So I bought a whiteboard. I screwed it to my wall with my drill, and I wrote on it, you know, today I have done something for my, and then I listed a series of things that they could do, and I broke it down by brain. You know, they can read a book, you can do a puzzle, you can write, you can do a board game, you can have a Sudoku, crosswords, Rubik's Cube, etc. Like, I just listed it all out so they had an idea. For my body, you know, my 13-year-old could go shoot hoops in the driveway. My 10-year-old could jump on the trampoline, or they could kick a soccer ball, or they could play Just Dance, or they could just put on music and have an old-fashioned dance party. I didn't care. Just do something for your body. And then for your home and your family, and this is something that I felt was win-win, because this benefits them. They're doing something healthy and active, and they're participating in the household, but it also helps me at the end of the day when I'm trying to get through my workday. I don't want to have to turn off my computer at 4 o'clock and then deal with a pile of dishes, and then go outside and pick up the dog poop, and then go downstairs and do 10 loads of laundry. So if you're home and you have nothing to do and you're waiting for me to help you with your assignment, but you have a gap in your day with free time, you know, and you're 10 or 13, then you can help with some of the family stuff. So clean your room, help with dinner dishes, do some laundry. I have on there, pick up the dog poop, which my kids all hate to do, but you know, it is something that has to be done. Take out the garbage and recycling, or even just call your grandma and grandpa. They would love to hear from you. So this is the way that I broke down the do something for my home or my family. For my creativity, you know, it's draw, build Legos, paint, make a comic book, color, play an instrument. And then, you know, I put 1 hour of knowledge hour, because that was the amount of time that I could book for them to help them with whatever they were doing for their homework, but they couldn't do on their own and needed a little bit of coaching. So we had set that time in the schedule, and they knew when that time was. And in between, they would either independently work or pick something off the list to do to kill time until I was able to give them that 1 hour of free time. So I recognize this isn't going to work for everyone. Like, this is heavily geared to people with, you know, older children. I would say that even the 8-year-old is able to do this, but under 8, you do need to have a little bit of coaching and understanding. So even though I was preparing this, we do have children under the age of 8 in the house. So, you know, it didn't always go as planned, but it at least kept the older kids occupied so that I can stop and help just one child instead of helping, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever children that I have. If you could go to the next slide. Also, what I've found out I needed to do was, I don't know if you guys felt this, but with all of my children home on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on week 1, and, you know, Thursday, Friday on week 2, the I'm hungry, what's for lunch, or I'm hungry, can I have a snack, or I'm hungry. I felt like a lot of the time I was just managing like a cafeteria as opposed to trying to get through my work day. And, you know, it's okay on the weekend to do that, because, you know, this is my family and it's what I signed up for. I wanted these children, and, you know, I can feed you freely on the weekend because there's nothing else going on. But during the workday, it's not as easy, and I find it very challenging. So what I had noticed was good for them and was good for me was to signal for them when they were home, you know, what is a work day and what is a weekend. So what did I do on a work day? You know, I would pack their lunches and send them to school. So I packed their lunches on days that they were home, and I didn't send them to school, but their lunch was there for them. If they were hungry, they could pick from their lunch kit. And I made sure to put in a ton of extra things, because for some reason they eat way more when they're at home than when they're at school. And it was always colorful, quick and easy and healthy, and they could help themselves. So this was, you know, something that also signaled to them the difference between what is a work day and what is a weekend for me, allowing me to get some work done and not have to stop and be the cafeteria lady. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. I also felt that when I was working on the board description and trying to come through with some ideas, it didn't help really to give them suggestions, especially for the 5 and 8-year-old. I needed to prepare playstations so that whatever was on that board, they actually knew where that was and they could pull it out. So what that meant for me was going to Walmart, buying like 3 or 4 totes and sorting some buckets out, you know, sorting out books on a bookshelf so that they had one shelf that was just dedicated to them, that they could pull out something that was interesting. organizing a Lego bucket for quick access, setting up some craft buckets or craft station at night so they could play with it during the day, setting up sort of like a living room area where they could just dump all those buckets and go completely chaotic. And then part of the family time was to clean up the chaos and put those buckets away. I tried to rotate the toys to keep it fun and interesting with the younger children, because I found that they would get bored if they were pulling out the same buckets every single day. And, you know, if your living room if your home living situation allows for it, if you have an outside space, it's good to do that outside too. Like, we had a little sandbox area, fill it with shovels and pails. And, you know, if I was able to work outside and not on a meeting, you know, I could work my 2-hour block where I would roll up my sleeves and get work done, and they could play in the sandbox. If you have, you know, a situation where you're just listening to a webinar, you know, maybe you're listening with earbuds in and going for a walk and taking the family for a walk while you're listening to your webinar. One earbud in, one earbud out, so you can sort of multitask, but it allows you to get something done and get the kids moving. So I found that these considerations to create the stations really worked for me. One thing that I heard a lot from people who had children who were between the ages of 10 and up was that, or even 5 and up, that they felt guilty if they had parked their child in front of a video game, or if they had parked their child in front of a movie so that they could get some work done. And I just want to say to all the parents out there who have done that, don't feel bad. We've all done that. And for your sanity, it's okay to do that, to let them sit in front of a movie for an hour and a half so you can get an hour and a half of work done with your laptop on the couch. Or if that's how you need to manage to get through your workday, like, don't feel like that's something that, you know, people are going to judge you for. It's a pandemic. It's not a normal time. Like, I found that I was trying to set the standards so high that, you know, I was still the same kind of mom that I was before the pandemic, where I was like, no, we're going to limit your Wi-Fi time, and we're going to limit this, and we're going to limit that. But then they were at home and they were doing schoolwork and working through the house, and I had to extend the Wi-Fi, and they were playing video games with their friends when they were done. And it all works. Like, they need that connection too for their mental health. And I needed that pause for my mental health to be able to get through my work. So just be kind to yourself when you have to, you know, alter your plans. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. So there's always something that you can't control it. And let's face it, like, I can plan for every scenario. I'm a planner in my life, and I need it to be like centered in my chakra. That's just who I am as a person. But I know that some days are going to be rougher than others, and I need to just roll with the punches. There are doorbells, barking dogs, kids running around, laundry, chores, even a beautiful day can interrupt your workflow. My cat jumped on my shoulder in the middle of a meeting once. That's my selfie that I took there. So don't stress, do your best. These things happen, and we all know that we're all working during unprecedented times. Nobody would be working in their office with laundry, with dishes, with, you know, animals, with their children. And so, you know, you just have to do your best and roll with the punches. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. So the one thing that I totally recommend, if your children are old enough to understand, at the end of the day, you know, communicate with them. What does your schedule look like for the next day, so that they know where those gaps are, so they can approach you if they need to. And, you know, some kids are in school full time right now. Some are in school part time. Some are online learning. You know, will they end up coming home again? Maybe, probably, who knows? But, you know, no matter what, the communication portion to how the household functions the day before and the day after is super important, even with young kids. With my little children, I review what successes did we have during the day. I really liked when you pulled that bucket off the shelf and you played quietly beside me and let mommy get through her meeting. That was something that I really appreciated, and good job. I'm proud of you for recognizing that I was busy and being able to manage that. You know, that's a nice moment for a parent to have with a child, as opposed to reviewing negative moments. So it's nice to review the nice things that happen and celebrate those successes. And then whatever works that day, prepare that to happen again the next day. And then again, like, as much as we prepare and try to organize and coordinate our lives with children at home while working, I know that it's not always going to go according to plan. So we can prepare, just be prepared that it may go awry. But at least if you have some preparation done ahead of time, then maybe, you know, more than likely it might go to plan the next day, and that might be a win and a success when you review it. And also, most importantly, unplug, turn everything off, and spend time with your children. When my children are home all day working on their school presentations and trying to sort of graze through life while I continue working my workday, you know, at the end of the night, it's only fair that they get all of me. So try and put your phone away. Your working hours are your working hours, and your evening hours are for your family. If you could go to the next slide. Thank you, Marcella. Okay, so reminder, this is not normal. And this is an image that we spoke to previously on Twitter through the FlexGC network, but it kind of went through the Twitter spheres and blew up a little bit. And where the source came from is not really known. It's hard to track. I think it was Parks Canada, but you have to remember that we're working remotely during a pandemic. You're not working from home in a normal situation. So we're working during a crisis trying to work. Your personal and physical, mental, and emotional health are the most important thing right now. You should try not to compensate for lost productivity by working longer hours. Definitely don't do that. If you didn't get a lot accomplished in a day because you had interruptions from your children, just shut down and try again tomorrow. That's done now. And be kind to yourself. Don't judge how you're coping based on how others see that you're coping. And also be kind to others and don't judge how they're coping based on how you're coping. And your team's success will not be measured the same way it was when things were normal. This is not normal. So just remember that as you're trying to get through your day. Be kind to yourself. Don't judge too hard on your standard that you may have had before. This is something that as a planner I've had to let go of a little bit. It's hard for me because I am very structured and regimented in general. So, you know, this is something that I've learned through the remote pandemic, working this way as a remote worker. You know, life is very different. And so my deliverables and how I think of my productivity, my parenting, everything has changed. So I'll just flip to the next slide. So here is our resources. You can find us online. You can email us. You can follow us on Twitter. FlexGC has a GC Wiki, GC Colab. We have some blogs and some learning resources. We're currently in development of a website. It's almost done, so you can go and start looking at it. And you can subscribe to our mailing list if you'd like to see where we are, when we're presenting, and what blogs we're offering to help. Of course, as Finn just mentioned, EAP is there to help as well. And then we've shared a quick collaboration sort of link here, a crowdsourcing sheet, where we've asked for input from you guys. You know, what sessions are you looking for from us as FlexGC to help manage and support you as you work this way? So I invite you to click on that link and join our network if you have free time. We're a bunch of great people working together, trying to just help our colleagues across the GC. And also this presentation will be shared on the FYN website in both official languages. So I flip that back to you, Josh.
Awesome. That was amazing, and I think your presentation, Natasha, made me want to take a nap, because I was kind of thinking through your average day, and that I probably have about 15% of the energy required to succeed at the number of things you have planned during a day. So for our participants, there are a couple ways that you can engage and ask your questions. So one of them is to use the question and answer function on your screen, so the Q&A function, and the other is to pose any questions in chat. So I'll start with kind of a general question. So for both you and Steph, but in terms of, you know, kind of staying positive during these times, I think we see a lot of kind of ups and downs, and depending on the region you're in, you know, that can change based on a provincial announcement that says that things are closed or things are open. But how can we get over the bad days, or how can we deal with the bad days?
Stephanie, did you want to comment?
I can start. Wine? No, that's a bad joke. Not so bad. I don't know. For me, I think it helps to try to start each day as a fresh day. So to try not to carry over what happened the previous day, and I find it very easy to go into a downward spiral if you keep dwelling on what happened before. It's hard right now because I think everyone's anxiety is high. And of course that anxiety can contribute to that spiral. So for me, it helps, like I said, I have the Calm app, and I find even 10 minutes of meditation first thing in the morning can really help. I will let you in on a secret that I'm not always really great at the actual meditating part. And sometimes I just listen to the words while I'm getting ready because I just don't feel like I even have enough time for that. Those walks and that fresh air really help. And just trying to start each day with the focus of what I'm going to do that day. I have this little like organizer. If I had it handy, I would show you, but it's just a chapters like list pad, and on it, it has, you know, areas of focus for today. So starting the day off, like thinking about that, thinking about gratitude. So like what's even one thing that you're grateful for first thing in the morning. Just kind of all of those little nudges help to set you off on the right track. And it doesn't mean that you won't go down the bad track at some point, but at least you're starting off on a more positive note. I find that that can help. It's not a perfect solution, but all of those little tiny things that are within our control can add up to making a difference.
Yeah, and I would say from a practical standpoint, like I tend to review what it was that didn't go so fantastic for me in the day, and I try and understand why it went that way. You know, maybe it's because my child needed a little bit more of me. Maybe it's because, you know, they were bored with the toys that I had put out for them and I need to recirculate a different set of toys for tomorrow. Maybe it's because I didn't have enough time in my day to get stuff done and I needed, you know, my kids to not interrupt so much. And maybe that's me managing my schedule with my manager then so that I can, you know, shrink that time that I have to give so that I can have a little bit more time to help them cope a little better as we're going through this. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll just add a link in the chat as well to mention that in October, the FYN and NMC are running a wellness challenge. So October is Healthy Workplaces Month. I think both of you during your time mentioned, you know, spending some time being active or getting outside, and that's really the focus of our challenge this month is to kind of be able to track that time a little bit and to use some apps that can kind of help you sort of stay active or suggest activities. So I'll add the link in the chat for that, and certainly encourage all of our participants today to engage in that. In terms of communication, so in terms of using the 6990 time code and sort of having those discussions with your manager, how can you kind of manage those types of situations? So if you have, you know, small children at home, I think, you know, some of the departments have been pretty good in terms of providing some guidance on how to, you know, have those discussions or how to schedule your workday. I think the immediate thought I had when I saw some guidance from Okro last week was, you know, you might not have enough hours in the day to really schedule that. So if you have a 7.5 hour workday and you have, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 hours worth of parenting to do, you know, there's only so much rescheduling of that work to times where you're unoccupied with that small child at home. But do you have any suggestions on how to sort of manage those types of situations, how to talk to your manager about that?
Well, I haven't had to have those discussions because I have older children, so maybe Stephanie might be able to comment, but I've been lucky because my manager I've been able to have open conversations with. I've said to him, you know, there are days when I have my children home and there are days when they're in school, and on those days I can, you know, where they're in school, I could heavily roll up my sleeves and contribute, and on the days when they're not in school it might be a lighter touch, and I hope that's okay. And the answer was, of course it was okay. You know, we're a team, and if we have to toss that ball to another team member and continue to have sort of that game of catch, that it's okay. So I've been able to manage it that way just through a conversation. But Stephanie, do you have insight for younger children?
Well, I don't even necessarily think it ties to the age of children. I think it's certainly a little easier when you have older children. I will say that one of my biggest pet peeves over the past 7 months has been the variances in how departments are communicating and handling employee wellness. And I think pet peeve is putting it mildly, quite frankly. I have some deep concerns about the varying experiences that people have had. For me, like I mentioned earlier, that I'm very open with my team. And at the beginning of the pandemic, the reality was my husband was assigned to a COVID task force for his organization, and he was working 12-hour days straight for 3 weeks. So at that time, I literally could not work. It's not realistic with a toddler to attempt to have a work day and solo parent all day, every day for weeks. After that point, I would say that I averaged probably between realistically 5.5 to 6 hours of work time per day, and that trying to actually get to 7.5 with the toddler in the house all day every day was just not feasible. And I took that time because there's a reason that it's being offered. And I don't think that any of us are doing a service to our employer if we're burning out. It's not healthy for us as individuals. It's not good for our families, and it's certainly not good for the workforce, because there are plenty of studies that show that leisure time, for example, is really important to productivity, and it's really important to being able to use your brain to its full capacity. So when we're burning the candle at both ends, it's actually detrimental on all fronts. I have seen a lot of examples where managers have not supported it, and it makes me really like mad and sad at the same time. So I in some cases, I would look to the actual source. Like if you're not getting the answer that you need from your manager to make your day feasible, then I would potentially look to your director, or if your organization has an employee wellness center, conflict resolution office, things like that, because that leave is there. It's very clearly stated what it's there for. And there should be some humanity in granting that time. And no one should be assuming that people are taking that time because they're taking advantage. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking a small amount if you need that break and you qualify for that, because it's a lot easier than trying to do it all.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a question come up in the Q&A, and I think that will probably be our last question of the session, because we're getting towards the 2:30 time. The question is, having babies is hard on the couple. Living through a pandemic is hard on the couple. How do you manage to save your relationship with your significant other when not having time for yourself? I think it's a great question, and hopefully we can provide a solution within the next 90 seconds. So, Steph and Natasha, over to you.
And for myself, it's all been about communicating, sharing where I feel that I need a hand, and it's a lot for me, and then also to sharing in that load. So I think that's really what it's been for me to be able to make it through when my partner is home, because he's also working still. It's like I've been managing with my children during the day, trying to be their teacher and do a job. Can you help with? And then I really clearly have to state what I need help with, though. So that's where the communication comes in, because I think that, when he's not here through the whole day, he doesn't know where the load has been dropped. So, being able to share that has really helped us. Stephanie?
When Josh said solution, I was like, Josh, this is a 1-hour session. What are you thinking? This is a challenge. Like, it's a reality that we are all experiencing right now. When we're stressed, when we're exhausted, when we're anxious and uncertain and we feel powerless, it's going to have an impact on the relationships around us. So I think there has to be a healthy dose of forgiveness. I agree with Natasha that there has to be good communication. And I will say that sometimes I'm really good at it. I'm really good at expressing what I need. And like, sometimes I suck at it. And that makes it difficult sometimes. I think it's normal right now to have more disagreements potentially. But I also think it's really important to remember what we're living through right now, and to remember what you appreciate about your partner. And it's tough when you can't go on a date, when you can't be a person outside of being a parent. That makes it incredibly hard to connect with your partner on like that more romantic level, I guess. Those date nights out, like that glass of wine at a restaurant or bar, is really helpful, because you're just talking as people instead of like talking about diapers and bedtime battles and things like that. So just try to find some moments to do things together that aren't Netflix. We go through periods where it's just Netflix, and then eventually we come up and we say, okay, we're gonna have a board game night, or we're going to order nice takeout after Greer's in bed, and things like that. And all of that can really help to balance a relationship. But forgiveness, communication, and love and kindness, I think, is just like the best quick advice I can give.
And
Yeah.
someone mentioned EAP as well, and just a reminder that that's there for you. There are virtual counselors that can connect you to have a conversation, just to help, find some reset within yourself, to help have those conversations. Sometimes those conversations are not so easy, and they're hard to just say, like, I think we need more us time, and let's figure that out. Date night in is a great idea. And I love that, Stephanie. I'm going to use that myself.
Awesome. There was just one more question in the Q&A that Natasha, I'm hoping you can just touch on quickly, just around being a parent and teacher at the same time, with kids logging into to Zoom calls and different sessions, and how to balance that. I think lots of it is in your presentation, which we'll have online shortly.
Yes. So I have, in grade 5, in grade 8, in grade 10, and so like there's a lot of virtual learning that's happening on the days when they are at home. And what I found worked best for me was that I was able to communicate with my children's teacher through their portal, letting them know that I am working full-time and my support level is minimal during the day, and asking for extensions on submissions for whatever assignments they have to be submitted on Sunday instead of Friday at 3 was something that was easy to do, and I always got a yes. I never got a no. When it was the parent asking for that extension because I'm working and I'm overtaxed, it was completely understood and very, very helpful. And then we were able to get some good work done on the weekends and submit whatever assignment they had. My daughter had to read Romeo and Juliet. I had to videotape her doing a soliloquy. She had to write a whole story about that and then submit it all together in one beautiful Google Doc package, and she had no idea how to do it. So I literally had to help her with the tech side. I had to be her film person, and this was the way that I was able to get an extension for her, because there's no way I could have dedicated 3 hours in my workday for that. I just couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we've come to the end of our time. So a huge thanks to Natasha and Steph for sharing their experience and sharing their tools and resources in terms of how they've approached this. So next week we will have a session with FlexGC on Distributed Teams 101, and then a bigger event on October 23rd in partnership with the Canada School and FlexGC. And so register for all of those sessions if you're interested. Our next learning event for the FYN is on Thursday, which is on career basics. And Marcel, if you can add the link in the chat to that one, that would be greatly appreciated. And that's again in partnership with the school. So we're expecting strong participation there. So thanks very much. Thanks very much, Natasha, Steph, and to all our participants across Canada for sharing your experience in terms of parenting during COVID-19 and during this time of work from home. Um,